Everybody. This is DJ Anderson, and I am here with Mark Garrett, and we are excited to bring you block 12 of 12, the Bling block. And so, just to let you know before we get started, if you do have any questions, you can use the questions pane on your control panel for the webinar, and we will be answering questions during the webinar concerning the contents of this webinar. So. But I don't want to hold you back. Mark, are you ready? Are you there?
I'm ready and I'm here.
I can hear you just fine, so we're good to go. So let's go ahead and get started.
Okay. Hello, everybody. And like DJ said, welcome to this My Decorative Quilter 2 block of the month monthly webinar. This is block 12 of 12. It's a Bling block. It's going to be using the new Swarovski crystals from R&K. And this is the last block of our series of 12, and in the next month's seminar we will be presenting a way to put the quilt together along with making a quilt label. But this Bling block was designed for you by Rita Gazard and presented by myself, and as DJ said, I'm Mark Garrett and I'm a National Floriani educator. As I always like to do before we get into the software and the construction details, I like to show you a picture of what the finished block is going to look like. So as we go through the steps, you will have an idea of where we're headed. So you can see that this is the basic block that we've been working with for the last 12 months with the fabric on the edges and the fabric in the center there. And we've been putting different things in the center, and this time we're going to be putting in some border designs along with some crystals, and you can see the crystal placement there. And this is where we placed them, but of course you can place them wherever you want. So this is what the block is going to look like. I'm going to go ahead and close up this PowerPoint right now. We're going to get right into the software instructions of how to create this block. So I brought up my decorative quilter, and I'm actually using Floriani's Total Quilter, which is the new program that we've got out that adds a lot more into the program besides my decorative quilter. If you want to upgrade to Total Quilter, see your Floriani dealer and they can help you with that. But this is basically, it kind of looks the same, so we're going to continue on here. If you haven't done it already, you want to click the new icon up here to start a new design window. So you'll have a grid that looks something like this. If it doesn't look exactly like this, don't panic, because the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make it look like this. Now before I get into that, I just want to mention that throughout this software instruction section, when I tell you to click, that means a left click. If I tell you to right click, obviously that's going to mean a right click. So again, click is a left click and right click is a right click. So what I want you to do is move the cursor up to the top so it's over this top ruler bar here, and right click on it to bring up the dialog that sets up our view of our workspace. You want to make sure that inches is checked, that show grid is checked. You want to make sure that snap to grid and snap to anchors is unchecked. And come down here to grid settings and click that, and let's go in and set up our grid. You want your horizontal and your vertical spacing to be both at 0.25, so that's 0.25 or quarter of an inch. And then your grid major wants to be 7 and 7 for both horizontal and vertical. Once you've got those set, go ahead and click OK to lock them in, and now your page should look something like this. The very next thing we're going to do is we're going to change our thread chart. Now mine's already changed, so I'm going to change it back to what the default is, and that's the Floriani Poly. And you can see that there's a lot of different colors here. In fact, we have 360 colors in this thread chart. So what we're going to do is we're going to move to a different thread chart that's got many fewer colors so that it's just a little bit easier to pick the colors that we want. We're going to do that by coming down here to this icon, which is our thread chart selector, and click that. It's going to open up your thread chart list, and what you want to do is choose Floriani Cotton. And you can see when we do that, we've got a much more limited, in fact 15 colors in our thread palette, because that's what comes in that thread colors. Now don't be confused about this. We're not meaning for you to stitch this block using cotton thread. Now you can if you want, but again, the thread that shows up in your block isn't dependent on what you put into the software. It's dependent on what you load into the machine when you go to stitch. So this is just for convenience and a smaller color palette. You can stitch it with any thread that you like. You can use cotton, but you can also use polyester or the Jenny Haskins rayon. So up to you what you want to stitch it with. So once you've done that, we're going to start by loading in a piece of our border block that we're going to use to create this quilt design today. We're going to do that with our border icon right here. So come up and click it, and that's going to bring up a dialog box showing us the various borders. Now there's hundreds to choose from. We're going to choose one near the top here. It's called FQBD004A. So it's this little squiggly right here. So go ahead and click it. Now obviously it's not a complete border. It's a piece of one, but we are going to turn it into a complete border. So when you click it, it's going to come in and show you the stitches like this. And when it comes in, it's actually going to come in grouped. And what we want to do is we're actually going to delete this right half over here, and we're going to use the left half, and we're going to mirror it over and create it in a little bit different orientation. So what we're going to do is we're going to need to ungroup this because this came in all grouped. In order for us to delete part of it, we've got to ungroup it. We're going to come up here to our ungroup icon and click it, and now it's all the separate pieces. Now to select this right half of the design, we're going to bring our cursor up into this quadrant up here. We're going to click and drag down to the lower edge here, making sure that we encase this whole right section in what's called a marquee. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here in about the center of that. I'm going to drag a box, making sure I get that marquee around the whole right side there and let off. And it's going to select this. It's going to ignore this loop because I didn't select all of it, and that's what we want. So we've got this half selected right now, and we're going to get rid of it. We're going to do that by using our cut icon up here. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and that's going to get rid of that half. Now what we want to do is reselect this whole thing. I could drag a box around it just like I just did, but another way to do it is to scroll up to the top of our sequence view and click all items to select everything. And what we're going to do now is we're going to line this border up with our major grid lines. And I've got a major grid line here and one here. What we're going to do is we're going to line this edge of the design up with our vertical grid line and the bottom with our horizontal grid line. So it's already pretty well lined up over here, so I'm just going to slide it up, and I'm going to use my outlines there to get it approximately in position and let off my mouse, and that looks pretty good. But I don't know if you can see this or not. Let me double click my magnifying glass to zoom in, but you can see that I'm off just a little bit on the horizontal and vertical. So this gives me an opportunity to explain to you some controls that you have that you might not know about, and we call those the nudge controls. And those are activated by holding down the control key and clicking the arrow keys on your keyboard. So if you just click the arrow keys by themselves, they pan the screen around. If you hold down control while clicking the arrow keys, it nudges whatever you've got selected up, down, left, or right. So I need to nudge this up a little bit. So I apologize you can't see my fingers, but I'm going to hold down the control key on my keyboard, and I'm going to nudge up a little bit first. So I'm going to give it one click up. And you see when I did that, the bottom line changed color. And it does that when my two lines, my grid line and my marquee line, are right on top of each other. So I want to do that again with the right side. And I apologize, my phone is ringing. I don't know if you can hear that, but I'm going to turn it off. I put it on silent, but it didn't last. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so now I've got my block all nice and lined up here, and it's in position. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually improve where this piece starts and stops, because what happens is that when this was a complete piece, it started and stopped in a reasonable place. But we're going to use differently, and now we've cut away half of it, so we just need to change where this is going to start, stop. And what happens is it right now is going to start somewhere up in here, and we want it to start over on this edge. So the easiest way to do that is we're going to actually add a run stitch into this design that's going to start over here and run up to where the stop point is. And we're going to hide that run stitch underneath the satin, so it's going to be kind of like this little bit of underlay that you can see here. So to do that, the very first thing you want to do is come up and grab your Run Stitch tool right here. So we're going to go ahead and click that. And now the cursor changes into a plus sign to tell us that we're going to start putting in run stitches. And you can see we've already got a run stitch in here. It's right here. It's the one that's part of the underlay. And we can go ahead and use the bends in this stitch as a guide for where to put our new stitch in. So we're going to actually click on the point right here. And if you don't get it exactly right, it's not the end of the world, but just close right into where that bend is right there. So I'm going to start clicking with my mouse. I'm going to come down to the next one and click. I'm just going to follow right along those bends, and I'm going to end right up in here. And when I'm done, I'm going to right click to lock in that set of stitches. Now it's right on top pretty much of the other stitch, so you really can't see it. Let me turn on 3D mode so you can see, and you can see now that that stitch is not where we want it. It's on top of the satin stitch. So I'm going to turn off 3D here again, and we are now going to move that stitch to stitch out first. And so the way we're going to do that is we are going to come over to our sequence view. We're going to scroll down to the very bottom and select that last run stitch. We want this to stitch out very, very first. I could drag it all the way up to the top, but I'm going to show you a keyboard shortcut or mouse shortcut really way to do that. By right-clicking on that run stitch, another menu comes up, and one of those items is Move. If I hover over the Move, I get some items, and one of them is First. So if I click First, it's automatically going to move that run stitch up to the very top. And if again I turn on 3D mode, now you see that that run stitch is actually hidden. If I click off it so you can't see it anymore, you can see that we would never ever see that run stitch when this design stitches out. So you've just learned a new technique on how to get somewhere where you want to start if the design didn't actually start where it was. Now what we're going to do is we're going to continue to modify this so it stitches out, starts, and stops better. And to do that, I'm going to turn off 3D again. And I'm going to come to my sequence view, and I'm going to select the last item, which is this satin path over here, this end of the curly Q. And to show my start and stop points on this, I'm going to click on my Shape tool, which is the second item down here over on my left. So I'm going to click that, and you can see that my stop point is now on this side of the satin column, and I actually want it to be over here on this side. So I'm just going to take and click it and just drag it across over to the other side. So it kind of lines up with the edge of the design and this major grid line. And when I've got that done, I'm done modifying this design. So it's going to start stitching over here and end over here. And you'll see how that all works out as we start to put in the pieces of this together. So the next thing I want to do is I want to come back over to my sequence view, and I'm going to select everything again. And that's going to take us out of shape mode, put us back into normal select mode. And what I want to do is I want to group all of this so this now acts as one object as far as the software is concerned. So what I'm going to do is come up to my group icon, and I'm going to click the group icon to group it. So now everything is together. And we're going to make a copy of it. So I'm going to go up to my copy icon, click copy, and then I'm going to click paste. And then I want to flip this vertically. So I'm going to come over here to my vertical flip icon and click flip vertical. And you can see now that we've got a mirror image of it. And what I need to do now is I need to drag this over into position over on the other side. So to do that, I'm going to zoom out so you can see what I've done. So I'm going to come up here to my zoom control, and I am going to click the little drop down, and I'm just going to select zoom out. And so now I've got some room to move. And just so you can see this whole edge over here, I'm going to pan my screen over just a little bit with these arrows down here on the bottom. So I've kind of scrolled it over. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over this design to where I make sure I have that hand. I'm going to click and drag over to the right. And what I want is this big loop that you see on the far right to touch my grid line here. And I want the smaller loop on the left to touch the vertical grid line. So I just want it right in there, just like that. And oops, my control zoomed out. Let me zoom back in. And that happened because I didn't set up my mouse correctly on my Mac side. So I'm sorry about that. But we'll persevere on and hope it doesn't happen again. So this is our piece of our border here, and it's positioned really well. If you need to position it a little bit better, and you can see I'm visually positioned it, I'm off just a little bit here and there. And you know what? I can use my nudge controls one more time. That's control with the arrows to come over and line up my lines just perfectly, and I'll come up just a little bit. Okay? And so now that's in the perfect position here. So once we've done that, I actually need to now change where the end of this curly Q is over here, because the next piece is going to start stitching and come down this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my sequence view, scroll all the way down, and click on the last item. And what I'm going to do is zoom in again so you can see what I'm doing at home. Now, you don't necessarily need to do this at home, but I'm zooming in so it's easier for you to see. Once again, I'm going to click my Shape tool, and I'm going to take this red stop point, and I'm going to move it down here to the bottom. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm just going to move it right to the bottom to where it's right at the edge of those stitches and the intersection of that grid line. So right just about there. And we've now got this one done. So I'm going to come back up to my sequence view, select all items one more time, and I'm going to make another copy. So I'm going to come up to my copy icon and click paste. And I've now got two sets of scrolls. And what I want to do is I want to rotate one of them right 90 degrees. So the top one's already selected. So I'm going to click on my rotate icons. Now, if you have my Decorative Quilter 2, all you're going to have is rotate 45-degree icons. And if you have Total Quilter, you'll have some 90s. And what we want to do is a 90-degree rotate to the right. So that's either 245 rights or 190 right. So let's go ahead and do 245. So I'm going to do one click, two clicks, and then I need to drag this one down into position. So I'm going to come up here near the top, got that hand. I'm going to click and drag it. And what I'm going to look for when I do that is I want these two to touch, but I want my grid, my box right here, my marquee line to line up with the edge over here. So you can see I didn't get that very well, and I want the top to be up here. So I'm going to drag over now. Unfortunately, when I click and drag, that box goes away. So I kind of got to eyeball it, but it looks like I did pretty good. Let me use my nudge controls one more time to get it just a little bit better, and I'm going to come down just a little bit, and boom, now I've got it in place again with those nudge controls. Next thing I'm going to do is, like we do a lot, I'm going to come back up to the sequence view, select everything, make a copy, paste, and this time I'm going to rotate what I just pasted in 180 degrees. So again, that would either be 290s or 445s. Let's go ahead and do two 445s. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to line this one up, and this time what I'm looking for is visual alignment, again with my marquees, and I'm going to let off so you can see where the marquee is, and I'm going to look for this top of this one to line up with the top of these stitches over here, and this line to line up with the edge of this curl. So again, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to nudge that into position so you can see my marquees as I do this, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball it there, and there we go. That's pretty good. So we've now created our main border, and what we need to do now is we need to set this on point, because if you remember what our block looks like, this border is actually a diamond, not a square, so it's on point. So what we're going to do is come up to our sequence view, select everything, and what we're going to do is rotate everything now just 45 degrees. So you want to come up to your 45-degree right rotate and click that, and now we've got a diamond. The last thing we need to do to this is we need to get this centered to our grid, and you can see right now it's not even close. Here's 0, and 0's way up at the top here, way off. So we're going to center this on our grid line, and the way we're going to do that with everything still should be selected, we're going to come up to our alignment tool, and we're going to click on that. The next to last item is center to rulers, which is our grid. So we're going to go ahead and click that, and you can see it went way off the screen. So we're going to use our shortcut of double-clicking the magnifying glass to bring everything back onto screen, and that's called a zoom to fit. It's a really great shortcut, double-clicking the magnifying glass. So you can see now this design that we've created is centered perfectly on our grid, and we're going to use this to get everything else centered as well. So now what we need to do, we need to create our center flower piece. And to do that, we're going to use just a little piece of this design to create the flower. And that means that the flower is going to be thematically related to this. To do that, we need to do some ungrouping. So we need to ungroup this whole thing because we're going to grab just a little piece from out of here. So what you're going to do is come up to your ungroup icon one more time and click it so that everything is ungrouped. And I'm going to click off of this design. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab a piece of this from this little piece all the way, this scroll down to here. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to come up into here, make sure I'm out past this edge, come up a little bit higher than I want to be, click and drag a marquee around that, and I'm going to let off the mouse, and you can see that I've got this whole thing selected here. If you see other pieces and parts selected, you want to redo that until you get this little piece selected, and it's really not that hard to do. Again, what we're going to do is we are going to make a copy of this. So I'm going to click copy, and then I'm going to paste it, and it's right in place now. Before I do anything else, I'm going to change the thread color of this because I want this to be a separate object. So what I'm going to do is come down and select the pink color. So I'm going to select pink, and now what I want to do is I want to drag this into position so its point up here is right here at this point of the intersection. So make sure I hover over it when I've got that hand, click and drag, and I've got the point, and I'm just going to position it by eye real close there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom into this so that we can see how close I got here. Not too close. Going to come back, make sure I reselect my select tool. So if you do this zoom thing and you're still in magnifying glass mode, if you try to click and select this, you're going to zoom in again. So it's always important to make sure you go back if you're done zooming and re-click your select tool. And what I'm going to do now is just kind of nudge this into position here, and that looks pretty good. I just clicked and dragged it into position. But before I do that, I left out a step. I'm sorry. I need to flip this horizontally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it horizontal, and that means I'm going to need to reposition it. So I'm going to put it back into the center right here, and that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that alone, and that's the start of our flower. Now you can probably guess what we're going to do next. We're going to duplicate this all the way around just like we did our border. But before we do that, we need to again fix the way this stops. So let me zoom in again to what we've got. Now I can click and drag a marquee around this, but I'm going to show you a cool shortcut. And that is if you click this down arrow, you can zoom to selection. And that's going to zoom right into what I've got selected so I can work on it. So what I'm going to do again is we're going to add a run stitch that runs from the top of this all the way down to about right here. So what I'm going to do is come up and grab my run stitch tool again, and you can see that when that happens, this is the pink thread, so I can't see it very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on 3D so I can see that a little bit better, and I'm going to come right up into here, and I'm just going to start clicking all the way down. So I'm going to click, and I'm going to come down here and click. I'm going to just stay in the center of this satin stitch. Now the instructions will tell you that you should be holding down Control while you do this. And that's going to make a nice curve if you do that. I'm going to come right down into here where we're going to end, and I'm going to right click to end. And as I was saying, that's going to make a nice curved stitch if you do that. But this is really tiny, so it really doesn't matter. And guess what? This is also going to be hidden underneath a satin stitch. So if it's straight lines or curved lines, again, it really doesn't matter. If you could see it, we'd want it to be a curve, but it's going to be hidden. So I've just done the simple thing and just left clicked all the way around there. Now, what we need to do is again move this so that it stitches out underneath this set of satin stitches and not on top like you see it here. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down in my sequence view and select this last run, which is the thing I just created, and I'm going to drag it this time up to where I need it to go. So I'm going to click and drag it, and as I get to the top of the box, you'll see the sequence view move. Now you might think I want to drag it right here, but that won't work. If I drag it right there, it's going to go right back to where it was, because I want it to be first in the sequence of this pink thread. In order to get that to happen, what I need to do is come up one more to the last item above it, which is that satin path for the lavender scroll, and let off my mouse. And when I do that, you can see it comes right here underneath the first pink item. So this is now the first pink thing that's going to stitch. And you can see if I click off it, you can't see that stitch at all. It's hidden perfectly underneath the satin stitch. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to click on that top level item here in my sequence view to select all of those stitches, and we're going to make a copy, and we are going to paste it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to rotate that right 45 degrees. So I'm going to come here and click rotate right 45 degrees. And what I want to do is I want to drag this over, and I didn't get it selected. And this is a problem. So let me, rather than try and figure out what I need to select here in the sequence view, actually I can see what it is that I need to select. I need to select this one, and I need to come all the way down and select the last item. So I'm going to hold down Shift and click it, and now I've got everything selected. Actually, it looks like I got one extra thing. So I'm going to come back up to my sequence view, and I didn't want this first satin item. I wanted to start with this run. So I'm going to hold down Control one more time and click on that first item to take it out of the sequence, and now I've got everything. Now I have to be careful again. What happened was that I clicked before I had the hand, and when you do that, you create a situation like I just did, which is not good. So now I've got the hand. So now I can click and drag, and what I want to do is line that inner curve up there up, and my top point's up. I'm just going to kind of set it kind of right there. And yes, they're going to overlap a little bit, but that's okay. So now I've got my second set of petals, if you will, selected. And what I'm going to do now is scroll back up in my sequence view, select the first pink item or the set of pink items right here in my sequence view. And once again, I'm going to copy and paste. And this time I'm going to rotate 90 degrees. So this time I'll use my rotate 90 degree icon. And I'm going to drag that one up into position. And let me zoom in so we get that a little bit better positioned. Okay, and I'm going to come back and click my select tool. I'm going to drag this up, and you can see, all right there's about perfect. Let me come down just a hair. Okay, there. I'm just kind of kissing these two edges right here. And what I'm going to do now is select everything. So I'm going to select everything that's pink by selecting that top level pink item. Again, I'm going to click copy and then paste, and you can probably guess what we're going to do now. We're going to rotate 180 degrees, so that's 445s or 290s. Let's go for 445s. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we're going to drag this guy into position, and again, we're just going to kind of line it up visually with the rest of it, lining up those curves. And if I did my first half good, my second half should look good, and that looks pretty good. If I click off it, you can see we've now got a beautiful flower design that we've created out of a little piece of our border. So we need to do one more thing. We need to clean up just one little errant stitch that's in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our magnifying glass and we're going to zoom into this quadrant right here. And what I'm going to do is just start up here and zoom kind of right about there to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to turn off 3D mode so you can see the stitch that we're about to select and move. And I apologize that that's a little bit faint on your screen. Again, make sure we turn off our magnifying glass by clicking select. I'm going to scroll down to my sequence view. And what I want to do is click on the second to last run stitch, the second to last item actually, which is this run stitch right here. And you can see that it's a little bit errant, and where we want to do is we want to move it right up into here, just this one little edge. So let me actually zoom in a little better so you can see that. I'm going to zoom right in, and I'm going to select my shape tool to do that, and you can see I've got the nodes of this stitch here. And what I want to do is move this stitch up into this petal right here. So in order to do that, I need to move this node down here. Now the node is hiding underneath my start point. Get to the node. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to temporarily slide this out of the way, and then I can get to my blue node. I'm going to click and drag it right up into here, and then I'm going to slide my start point all the way back, and that completes that. So what I need to do now is I need to come up to my sequence view, and I am going to come up and click the very first item. And when I do that, it's automatically going to lock in those stitches. Now, I could have right-clicked to do that, but I didn't. I'm going to double-click my magnifying glass so you can see that I've got this big lavender section selected here. So what we're going to do now is resize this to fit in our block. What I'm going to do is come and click the Transform tab in my Properties box, and you can see right now it's at 5.38 inches. That's too big. And you want to make sure that before we do anything else that Maintain Aspect Ratio is checked and that inches is checked. What we're going to do is modify our width to 4.75 inches. So I'm going to come in here and type in 4.75, and I'm going to click Apply. And that's going to shrink it down a little bit so it will fit into our block. And we're going to do that now with the pink centerpiece, but we're going to change it a little bit differently, and we're actually going to make it a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down in my sequence view to where I can see that pink item. I'm going to click on the top level of the pink, which is going to select all that. And this is going to be made bigger, like I said, but we are going to change it. Instead of to an inch, we're going to change it by percentage. So we're going to go up to 110%. So I'm going to type in 110%, click Apply, and that's going to resize it up a little bit so it fills in the space a little bit better. The very next thing we need to do is we need to add this into our block that we've already created for the base block for the block. So instead of adding this in, we're going to actually do it the other way. We're going to bring that block into this design. So the way we're going to do that is come up to our File menu, and we're going to click Merge Stitch File. So click Merge Stitch File, and what you want to do is navigate to your November 2015 MDQ project folder, and in there you'll have the basic block for BOM that we started with way back last year. And go ahead and click that, and click Open, and that's going to bring in that block. And when it does it, you can see that it brings it in way over here to the right and down. So go ahead and click anywhere on that block to select it. And what we're going to do now is center it. Now this one's already centered on our rulers or grid, so we're going to use that fact to center this one to this one. So we're going to come over here and we're going to click our alignment tool one more time and click on Center to Rulers one more time. We're going to go ahead and double click our magnifying glass so we can see it, and you can see that now everything is all nice and centered up. We've got one last thing to do to this block before we save it, and that is the way this is right now is our center would stitch out first our decorative stitches, and then it would stitch out the stitches we need to put the block together, and we want it to be exactly the opposite. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up to the top, and we are going to right click anywhere in our sequence view, and we're going to select Collapse All. And when you do that, it gives us a nice collapsed view, so we're not seeing all the individual stitches, we're just seeing those top levels. What you want to do is click on the very first one, and then holding down the Control key, click on the second one. So these are the stitches that we added, and they're first in the sequence view because we put them in first, but we want them to be last. So what we're going to do is right click on them, and again we're going to come up and hover over our Move and click Last. And you can see before I let off the mouse that first isn't even lit up. That's because they're already first. So we have got now this block all put together just the way we want it. We've got our block design stitching out first, our decorative stitches stitching out last. All that remains to do is to save it. So I'm going to come up here and click my Save icon, and I'm going to navigate to my October directory because this is the October project. So it's right here, and you should have an October 2016 folder if you've downloaded the project. So what you're going to do is double click that, and you can see that Bling block 12 of 12.waf has already been saved because it comes with the project. But what we want to do is we want to save the version we just created. So what I'm going to call that, instead of Bling block, I'm just going to call it My Bling block 12 of 12. and I'm going to click Save, and that saves the WAF version, and you always want to get in the habit of saving the WAF version, and of course you're going to need a stitch file version, so the way we're going to do that is come and click File, Save As. We're going to be in that same directory, and instead of a WAF file, what I'm going to do is save it, for example, in my Baby Lock Brother multi-needle PES9 format, and I'm going to give it the same name. I'm going to call it my Bling Block 12 of 12, and I'm going to click Save, and that's going to save my machine file, and now all I have to do is put it on a stick and take it over to my machine. So that is the song of this webinar. Let's go ahead and move back to our PowerPoint presentation, and we will go on with the construction details. So you've seen the title slide, you've seen the picture of what it looks like, and like I was saying about thread colors is you can see that we've actually stitched this out with yellow and lavender thread, and in the design it was lavender and pink. So again, you want to choose colors that work with your fabric choices. And you can see here we've also got the blings, the crystals put down, and you can use this photo as a guide to putting your crystals down, or you can put them anywhere you like. So let's talk about the materials that you're going to require to create this block. First of all, you're going to need some Floriani quilted soft bamboo cotton blend batting or Floriani embroidery batting. It's up to you. You're going to need some Floriani nylon no-show mesh stabilizer, some embroidery and bobbin thread, and you want to choose a color for the top thread that works well with your fabric choices. You're going to need some of the R&K embroidery perfection tape. That's the pink tape. You're going to need some minimum 6" by 6" or 150 millimeter by 150 millimeter hoop size. And you're also going to need our R&K Hot Fix Rhinestone Center. That's our new really cool battery-operated rhinestone setter. It's a really cool tool for setting rhinestones. You don't need to change the tips. You don't have a hot thing hanging out all the time. You just push the button when you want it to set the stone, and boom, you're done. And lastly, you're going to want some of the R&K Swarovski crystals. And again, you can get both of these, the tools and the crystals, at your Floriani dealer. So I'm going to go to the next slide here for the fabric details. So basically for the fabric details for the batting, you're going to need 4 5.5" squares of batting. For fabric A, that's for the center, you're going to need 4 4 3/8" squares. For fabric B, you're going to need 4 4" squares cut in half diagonally for the corner pieces. That's for half the corners. So you're going to end up with a total of 8 pieces of fabric. The same for fabric C. It's just a different color. And then you want to understand that these quantities make 4 blocks. Now, if you want to see the complete project fabric list, you want to see the info guide that we included in the November 2015 download. Before we embroider, it's important to note a couple things. Some of the color changes in here are in the design simply to make the machine stop between the steps. And in this particular block, that's so you can put your various pieces of fabric down and press them out of the way, etc. And you have the option of leaving the same color thread in or change it as desired. Personally, I load up the color thread that I intend to use for the quilting stitches and just go ahead and leave that in all the way through the steps. I just don't change. But it's important to note that if you have a multi-needle machine, you need to make sure that you use your machine controls to insert reserve stop commands so that the machine stops between the appropriate thread colors so that you have a chance to put your fabric down and fold it out of the way, etc. So let's go ahead and embroider the design now. You want to go ahead and load the Bling Block 12 of 12 design into your machine. You want to hoop up a piece of Floriani nylon no-show mesh, get it nice and tight, attach the hoop to the machine, and stitch out the first color, which is going to show you the placement line for where you're going to put your piece of batting down. Go ahead and put that batting down within the placement lines, and you want to tape the corners down with the embroidery perfection tape. Then you want to stitch out the next color, which will be the placement lines for our fabric pieces. Then you want to center your fabric A piece within the lines, right side up. And next you want to put your fabric B triangles along the placement lines, right sides down, centered on the fabric as you see here. And go ahead and stitch out the next 2 colors, which will tack these triangles down. Then you want to press open these 2 corner triangles. and then place your fabric C triangles along the placement lines on the opposite corners, again right sides down on the center of the fabric, and stitch the next two colors to tack those triangles down. Press them open. Now you want to remove all the tape, and now the time, if you didn't start with this color, you want to change the top thread to the color that you intend for your quilting stitches, because that's going to show. So what you want to do is do that color change, and then go ahead and stitch out the next color for the quilting stitches, and then you're going to stitch out the next color for the guidelines. And I go ahead and leave the same thread in for both of those. And now you want to probably change your top thread color, because we're going to stitch out the first set of decorative stitches for the border. So go ahead and stitch out your border. Change the thread one more time for the inner design. Go ahead and stitch that inner flower design out. Go ahead and now remove the block from the hoop and trim it to 6 inches square. And the new Quilter Select 6 by 6 inch square ruler is great to do this with. Again, you can get that at your Floriani or Quilter Select dealer. And you want to now add your crystals as desired for Bling. And again, you can use our picture as a guide for where to put your crystals down, or feel free to put them wherever you like. Then you want to put this, or repeat this sequence 3 more times to make a total of 4 complete blocks. So that ends the construction details and our webinar for today. I want to thank everybody for attending. We hope you'll use the video along with the print PDF instructions to recreate this project at home. We hope you'll come back next month for the last installment of the series. Again, it's going to be a quilt label, and we're going to give you some tips and pointers on how to put this finished quilt together. And lastly, don't forget to post your block progress on the Floriani Embroidery Facebook page, because we're going to be giving out some prizes to the best looking blocks and quilts at the end of the project, which will be, I don't know, DJ, we'll probably give them out sometime December or January, right?
Correct.
Are you there?
Yeah,
yeah.
I am.
Okay. I had to wake DJ up.
Okay. No, I had to unmute it. So
okay. All right.
now
so,
I do have a bunch of blocks that I could show really quick.
Oh, go ahead. Let's see some of the block progress that these wonderful people have done.
All right. Let me go ahead and get my screen ready here. Okay, can you see it?
I still see my screen. Hold on. Let me end my show here. Nope, I still see my screen.
It's showing me as the presenter.
Okay, I see it now.
Okay. So I'm just going to scroll through these really quick. These are just some examples of some of the blocks that have been shared so far on Facebook. And just like in last time we did it, there's a big difference in all the blocks because the fabric choices and color choices. So it's very, very neat to see just how different each block looks based on the fabric and thread used. So we do appreciate you guys taking the time to put these on the Facebook page. I grab them from here and file them away so that we can get a winner at the end of this. And let's see here. It didn't start at the beginning, so let me go ahead and...
That's a pretty block. That's our one. That was our double reverse applique block, if I remember right.
Yeah. Let's see here. So this is the first block that we did. So you can see the different variations. To me, it's just amazing how different it looks based on the fabric and thread. So very neat combinations that have been utilized here. So let's see here.
That one looks like it was done with satin.
This one.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
As you're looking at these at home, I think it's fun to notice the quilting stitches, which is not what's in the center, but around the edges in it. It looks like this was quilted by someone who is, an expert with a long arm, but you did it all in your hoop. Wow, look at that block. Those are pretty.
Yeah, very pretty. So just wanted to share a few with you. Keep it up. We love getting seeing the pictures of your work, and we're excited that you guys are following along. So Mark, did you have anything else before we ended today?
Nope, I don't have anything else. I want to thank everybody again for attending, and thanks for all the great work you are doing on your blocks.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and we'll see you next month. Until then, bye-bye.